All right. So with each of the awards, I'm going to run through a description of each award and then invite the presenters of the awards to come up. First of all is the Young Birder Award. The Young Birder Award is given to a person under 25 years old who has contributed to our knowledge of Minnesota birds or to the MOU. Young birders have received the award for an assortment of achievements, including starting birding clubs, participating in Christmas bird counts and birdathons, and volunteering at places like Hawk Ridge. And I get the fun distinction of being the third Young Birder in line who's actually here who can present this award. So I'm going to present the Young Birder of the Year Award. Many of you might remember Ben Douglas's impressive year of recording over 10,000 ticks in Minnesota in 2019, a feat that involved countless hours of birding in pursuit of this goal. Ben had some help along the way, and this year's Young Birder winner was actually the first to spot Ben's 10,000th county tick, a ruby-throated hummingbird at the top of a tree. Impressing Ben and others that morning with his sharp eyes and ears, our winner would continue to solidify this impression when he rediscovered the famous painted redstart in St. Paul a year later in 2020. In addition to our nominee having sharp field skills, he is also one of the most important skills for being a good birder, dedication to being a careful field observer. Our winner is cautious but knowledgeable with his identifications, taking care not to shoot from the hip or ID a bird based off what he needs for his list, but rather to be as accurate as possible. He regularly submits documentation to the Minnesota Ornithologists Union's record committee, whether it is for a rare bird that he found, such as a Mississippi kite in Lyon County in 2021, or for rarities that other people have found that he has chased. In addition to contributing records to the MOU and eBird, our nominee is also the compiler for the Marshall Christmas bird count in Lyon County, yet he remains one of the humblest young birders in the state. He also has an impressive willingness to pass on his knowledge and passion to the next generation of birders, exemplified by a trip this past summer in which he took a Boy Scout troop to Marshall to see the black-throated sparrow, which is an accidental species in Minnesota. Due to his dedication to documenting birds, careful field birding, and a willingness to share his knowledge with others, we are pleased to present Nolan Meyer with the 2022 Young Birder Award. All right. Next in the docket of the awards is the Brother Theodore Velker Award, which is for special achievement in field ornithology during the past year. The award honors field ornithology in one of three categories: significant bird sightings, something written, a journal article, a book, or technical paper, or a field research project, as well as involvement in special events, conservation, mentoring, and education. The Velker Award has been presented to people whose achievements have ranged from spotting first state record birds to taking action to conserve land critical to boreal species in Minnesota. This year to present the award is Alexis Grindy. Alexis.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alexis Grindy, and I have the privilege of running the Avian Ecology Lab at the Natural Resources Research Institute at the University of Minnesota Duluth. And I also have the privilege of presenting this award today. I'm going to make them actually come up here and stand awkwardly while I talk about them. Kara Snow and Steve Colby, come on up. While they're coming up here, in 2017, myself, along with two other collaborators at the University of Minnesota, started a project, and their names are Marcella Windmiller Campione and Robert Slezak. But we started a holistic project to better understand the ecology of peatlands here in Minnesota. And a portion of that project was focused on learning more about the breeding ecology of two imperiled species. Smile, you guys are getting pictures taken everywhere. Of two imperiled species, the boreal chickadee and the Connecticut warbler. Now, these species have been chronically understudied because they live in relatively low densities and very, very harsh environments. And so when I get this project funded, you have to figure out who the heck is going to actually do this work. And the answer is these two. So Steve and Kara have lived and worked in some of the most remote areas of Minnesota from May to August for the past 4 years, trying to learn more about these species. They are incredibly dedicated and passionate about these birds. And under any conditions, nest searching for birds, doing telemetry is really difficult, but when we're talking about going through peat bogs and down trees and flooded roads, and then the ridiculous amounts of mosquitoes, I guess, and the frustration and sadness and heartache when you see a nest that's predated or a fledgling that's been recently turned into the tissues of a red squirrel. Well, there's not two other humans on the whole face of the earth that's more deserving of an award for their hard work and dedication for this project. Some overall results. So Steve already talked about the Connecticut warblers, 11 nests, 13 individuals tracked. Boreal chickadees, 33 nests, 58 fledglings from 24 broods, and they collected over 1,200 vegetation points so we can learn about these species. And the data that they've collected help us better understand the overall breeding ecology, their habitat needs, and are already being used by our partners at the Minnesota DNR to conserve and increase the habitat quality for these species. So I cannot overstate the importance of the data collected by Steve and Kara and the impact that it'll have for long-term conservation of our boreal species. And their passion, their hard work, their commitment to birds is very admirable and inspiring to me every day. I'm very grateful for them working in my lab and also because they're really awesome humans and super fun as well. So congratulations, you guys.
So next, we have a fairly new award. This is the Volunteer of the Year Award. This award was created in 2019 and is presented to a person whose dedicated, useful service to the MOU and or the birding community at large has made a significant difference. And this award is a way for the MOU to honor those individuals who have devoted many hours and much energy to the good of birds. This year, we have 2 award recipients. So I'm going to invite Jim Egge and Bob Dunlap up to the stage to introduce the recipients.
About 50 years ago, the Audubon chapter of Minneapolis founded the Bluebird Recovery Program. At that time, bluebirds were nearly extirpated from the state. So 26 years ago, a man named Jack Hauser, who many of you know, decided he wanted, as the song says, to have a bluebird singing on his windowsill. So he started with a Peterson box. Faithful to his engineering background, he decided he could make some improvements. Now, an eager birdhouse builder could spend a great deal of time to build, say, 50 houses. This would include posts, clamps, and then find promising sites to install them. Jack Hauser kept making improvements. He built house number 100, mostly out of recycled materials. About 4 years ago, Jack built Bluebird House number 1000. Today, you'll find Bluebird houses on most of the golf courses and many of the parks in the Twin Cities. Bluebirders have only to drop off a Bluebird house needing repairs in Jack's porch. He's 91 years old, and he'll have it for you in a week. His passion soon expanded to include other cavity nesters, such as the prothonotary warbler. He found several good sites and built houses to promote their minimal survival in Minnesota. I'm not sure what the status of the prothonotary warbler is today, but he still has a concern for them. But you might expect that wood ducks also benefited from Jack's ambitions. The last few years, he's taken an interest in declining kestrel populations. Now, he has built 24 kestrel houses, which you may have seen at the state fair. I've got one right here. This, he doesn't mess around. These are prime examples of the houses that, I mean, we'd be, if we were small enough, we'd be happy to live there. Now, he's currently, the reason I have it up here, he wants to find people who know of a good site for them at a power line, state park, or something of that nature, and somebody would have to be able to monitor these for kestrel families. Now, Jack is feeling poorly. He's not able to be here today, but he's the winner of the Volunteer of the Year Award for 2022. And since he's not here, his good friend Dan Call is going to accept the award and give it to Jack.
All right, as Clinton mentioned, we have a second winner of the Volunteer of the Year Award this year. As members of this volunteer-run organization and members of our volunteer-supported sport, we are thrilled that we have two recipients of our award this year. This recipient is someone you all likely know and someone whose volunteer efforts we have all benefited from. And if you use eBird, you most likely have heard from him directly. Since his retirement, he has spent about as many hours volunteering as he did working. That might be an overestimate, but it's probably not too surprising. Among his many volunteer efforts, he has been an eBird reviewer longer than most people have been using eBird. He started as a volunteer reviewer for Minnesota in 2007 and did all of the reviewing by himself for 10 years. While his hours go unreported, he volunteers daily, accumulating hundreds of volunteer hours every year. There are many duties that come with being an eBird reviewer, and he regularly goes the extra mile. Most eBird users are aware that he sees and reviews reports of rare birds or high counts of birds for most of the counties in Minnesota. This alone leads to hundreds of emails being sent to users every year, and the back and forth communications take a substantial amount of his time. In addition to this, though, follows up on issues brought to his attention by other eBird users, spends time reviewing images submitted to eBird of rare and common species alike to ensure proper ID, manually goes through thousands of checklists to look for errors such as start time or mileage issues, and continually refines filters across the state, editing them for species and subspecies high counts, arrival and departure dates, and seasonal fluctuations of abundance. All eBird lists go through these filters, and the filters get flagged and become flagged records, so they are very important to get corrected. He was recently asked how much time he spends on eBird reviewing. And while he didn't know, he did note that every filter takes 40 to 50 hours of work to create, plus extra hours cleaning up the newly flagged records that updating these filters create. In addition to all that, he will take time to assist users if they have questions about ID or bird ID or eBird best practices. The review work he does for eBird greatly improved the quality of the data that are uploaded from eBird to the MOU database. The eBird records make up the majority of new records in the MOU database, and those reports form the basis for things like the quarterly seasonal report. Speaking of seasonal reports, he also spends many hours on the winter seasonal report. So it is our great pleasure to have the opportunity to present this year's second Volunteer of the Year Award to Bruce Fall, in recognition of his many hours of volunteer service. And we're pretty sure he's not here and couldn't make it, so just next time he asks you about a rare bird that you submitted, just say thank you.
And our final award of this awards session for 2022 is the Thomas Sadler Roberts Memorial Award. It has been traditionally given as Minnesota Ornithologists Union's Lifetime Achievement Award. This award is for outstanding contributions to Minnesota ornithology and birding, with previous recipients having contributed to ornithology in many different ways. And here to present the 2022 T.S. Roberts Award is Shushma Reddy.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Clinton. I'm going to read from the nomination letter that I submitted. And I'd like to start by saying I'm sad that my co-nominee is not here to help me give this award, but I'm really happy today to be presenting this award to someone that I call a good friend and really happy to know as a colleague as well, Dr. Francesca Cuthbert. Which might be a surprise or might not be. And I won't make you stand here awkwardly. I'll let you sit until the end of my talk. So many of you are familiar with Francie, who began her career in ornithology as a graduate student at the University of Minnesota, working at the Bell Museum on Caspian terns. And she recently retired from the University of Minnesota as a full professor after a productive career spanning more than 4 decades. She is absolutely an outstanding example of an ornithologist who's dedicated her life's work to the conservation of water birds. Her key work is on the recovery of the endangered Great Lakes piping plover population, as well as management and conservation issues surrounding several water bird populations across North America and Asia. And here I will briefly outline some of Dr. Cuthbert's tremendous achievements as an exceptional conservation biologist who is well deserving of this honor. Over the last 40 plus years, Dr. Cuthbert has focused much of her research on conservation efforts of several species across the upper Midwest. Most notably, as I said, her pivotal role in the restoration efforts of the Great Lakes piping plovers. And even before their listing as endangered, Francie was involved in monitoring the diminishing populations of these small birds. And this include efforts to maintain the breeding population in the Lake of the Woods of Minnesota. And with steady efforts, her team, and of which Francie is central to this team, has really helped lead efforts towards restoration of this population, not in the Lake of the Woods, unfortunately, but in other parts of the Great Lakes, including activities to monitor, protect, and captively rear and study piping plovers. And in the last 3 decades, we've seen that this has led to a successful increase from a population that had dwindled down to less than a dozen pairs to currently almost to more than 70 pairs, breeding pairs. So this is a really tremendous effort, and Dr. Cuthbert is a central figure in all of these efforts. And I want to highlight just how much this involves, right? She, is the person that hires and trains the numerous nest monitors that go into all these different sites that keep a watch on the breeding pairs and the chicks and the potential predators. A lot of these are short-term summer interns, university students, and many of these go on to fruitful careers in biology. And in fact, in the audience today, there are a number of people here to help cheer on Francie, so you can see that the impact that she's had has really carried through over generations. She also helps to build the exclosures to protect the nests, band all the chicks and the nests, the adults, transport chicks from their breeding site to captive rearing sites when needed, and organize all of the recording and all of the analyses that go with the data that's associated with this project. So it's really tremendous. And I wanted to talk about a few of the other things that Francie does in addition to piping plovers. And I'm going to keep this short because we have to move on with the rest of the program, but it's really hard to keep this short given the number of achievements that Francie has had, right? So in addition to piping plovers, she's worked on projects with waterbird species across the Midwest, including addressing conflicts between the fishing industry and double-crested cormorants, looking at demographics of several tern species and gulls and colonial nesting seabirds, and as well as studying the possibility of disease transmission across migratory water birds. Dr. Cuthbert is internationally renowned and has worked in Asia to help guide conservation efforts there. Her work has resulted in more than 100 peer-reviewed publications, a substantial portion of which are the result of training graduate students. She is a fan favorite for giving lectures. She's given several at the MOU paper sessions. And she's been tremendously successful in gaining funding for her projects from a range of sources, state and federal agencies, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Minnesota DNR, Michigan Department of Michigan DNR, USGS, et cetera. I can go on. And all of this is more than $6 million that she has raised towards research and conservation of various waterbird species. But most importantly, I will say, Francie has also done a tremendous amount to educate and train the future of ornithology. She has advised over 50 graduate students, 40 master's, and 14 PhD students, as well as mentored hundreds of undergraduate researchers. And as her students will attest, Francie is just active and highly supportive as a mentor and goes out of her way to help her students. She's also an active member in several bird-related organizations, the MOU. She's a fellow of the American Ornithologists Society. She was past president of the Waterbird Society, and so has remained really active in lots of ornithology-related activities. And to summarize, I want to say that Dr. Cuthbert is an exceptional scientist who has demonstrated a lifetime of success working on conservation issues of waterbirds. Her efforts have led to tremendous knowledge of several species of shore and water birds and has made great strides towards restoration of habitats to support healthy populations. And in addition to advancing scientific knowledge and developing successful conservation strategies, Dr. Cuthbert is a prolific mentor and collaborator. She is a model of how one can have a fruitful career in science by building a collaborative, supportive, and encouraging program. So I want to have you all help me in honoring Dr. Francesca Cuthbert with the T.S. Eliot Roberts Award. One thing that didn't make it into my letter, and I should have, was that Francie also has a plane named after her. So, you know, if the T.S. Roberts Award is not enough of an honor, she also has several other accolades.
Part of the reason we can honor these folks is because we have folks who suggest them for these awards. Every year, these awards are given, so if you have seen this wonderful array of folks receiving these awards and you think someone that you know might fit, there are very good and easy ways to do that from the Minnesota Ornithologists Union website. I don't know if Susan is here, but Susan Elliott would be the person to go to as well. But let's give everybody one last round of applause.